joining for another session of Azure Powered Lunch. And as you know, that we record this call and place our recordings on our YouTube channel. So if you don't want to be recorded, you may want to drop off now. And the floor is yours, Kumar. Please take it away.
Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are. Happy Friday. My name is Kumar Alam Raju. I'm a cloud solutions architect here on Azure. Uh, I just wanted to give in the last month we have released a lot of features in Azure OpenAI or Azure AI in general, but in the interest of time, I had to cherry pick only 2 or 3 features. Hopefully, I can demonstrate. Uh, so here they are. So one of the things that we released in the last month is GPT-4o Mini. Uh, OpenAI released this to make it more cost effective for users. And then right on day one, we've made it available in Azure OpenAI. So now people may ask, what is it, how is it different, and how does it help me? Obviously, like any other new technology, it comes with a lot of new features. For example, whenever we see these mobile phones, we say the battery life is great, or it comes with all these packed features. Uh, so, but we also have something like large language models and small language models, right? So this actually comes under a small models category of OpenAI, but still it's cheaper. It gives you an excellent performance. But as usual, it has some caveats in terms of what kind of use cases that we can use for GP 4o Mini, right? It is still a multi-model, unlike the prior releases, which is, let's say you take GPT 3.0, 3.5. They are not multi-model, but this is indeed a multi-model. So you can use this model for text as well as images, right? Which I'll show you shortly in the demo. So GPT-4o is a multi-model, but GPT-4o Mini is also a multi-model, but obviously it's a bit cheaper, which I'll show you in the pricing calculator too. But GPT-4o and GPT-4o Mini both are multi-model language models from OpenAI. And we do say, obviously, OpenAI says that they trained it in the last last October 2023, but it has obviously more intelligence. The performance test shows both in Microsoft Labs as well as in OpenAI Labs, it is much faster than the predecessors. Now, as I mentioned, everything comes with some caveats, right? So, although it is cheaper, it comes under the small models category. We need to use it for some preliminary task where it doesn't require much compute power, or rather, I would say GPU power, right? For example, it's not recommended if you need to do a lot of you know, data sets processing or image processing or GPU, graphical and everything, right? But as long as we know what it is ideal for, we should be using, GPT-4o Mini. And then customers, we have seen customers doing mix and match based on their use cases. They'll start small, and most of the times they would say, 4o Mini is ideal for their use cases. For some complicated tasks, and they can go for GPT-4o, right? That way they'll get best of both worlds, right? So here's what I was talking about in terms of the pricing. Although we say it's a bit cheaper, much faster. So if you see, so the latest is obviously it was trained until it was released just last month. That's why we call 7/18/2024 bunch of the version, but it was trained up to until last year, October 2023. So this is just a screenshot. They got it from OpenAI website in terms of what do they mean by 4o Mini and how it is affordable, ideal for a lightweight task, but at the same time, how it is much capable, much faster than GPT 3.5 and everything. Now, in terms of we also released something like global versus regional, and I'll explain in this context. So, as you know, there has been a huge demand for OpenAI in general, right? And we are all challenged with the compute power, especially GPUs, right? And placing them in each of the data centers does take time in terms of the planning, positioning these high compute powers in each of the data centers, right? But the way we say is we want our customers to see Azure as a big compute, right? Instead of just localizing it to just one data center, right? At the same time, we understand for sovereignty reasons, customers may like to local or keep it in the same region. We totally understand. So there's always a trade-off in terms of cost versus the governance or keeping it in the local to the region, right? But here, what we're talking about is when you are deploying these Azure OpenAI models, you have an option to choose global versus regional. And obviously, regional is good if you wanted to keep the data in the same region for compliance reasons, governance reasons, whatever it is. But if you have some flexibility um, that you can give it to Azure, then you can where we can do the processing in any of the available data centers, right? So that's where we can give you a lower cost at the cost of you giving us some flexibility, and we'll give you the cost. It's like one of those things where reserved instances, if you say, you're going to run this compute for 24 by 7 hours for an year or two, then we'll give you huge discounts. It's along those lines. But in this case, this is applicable to Azure OpenAI models, right? Obviously, when you go with the regional, it gives you reduced throughput because in any given region, we have to honor a lot of customer demands. Whereas if it is global, then obviously we have an option to run your tasks or models in any of the available Azure data centers, right? So we'll give you much higher throughput. So these are some of the things that we are giving options to the customers when you are deploying these OpenAI models. So as you start through these development planning or in terms of strategy, you will be able to pick and choose. For example, let's say for test and dev, maybe you're okay with the global, but as you move towards the production, you can, stick to regional if your application demands it, or if you say you need to keep it local to the region, right? So along those lines. So the reason I'm saying this is because we do have different cost models. So I wanted to give more context or explain about global versus regional, and then we have the cost for each of those things, right? So, for example, if you give us an option where we allow you to inference your tasks in the global deployment model, then for 1,000 tokens, you can imagine this is like what, uh, 15 cents, right? For 1,000 tokens, like that's what it translates to. But let's say you need to keep it in one region, for example, in Americas or in East US or West US or maybe in EMEA, then it's a bit higher cost. But this is just one aspect of it. The other is obviously you'll be challenged with the reduced throughput and all those things, which is still okay. So we will have to make the right judgment call to see what we can do, right? So this is something that we have introduced so that we can make this the innovative service across all uh, Azure data centers at the same time able to meet the customers' demands. Okay. So, so I also wanted to show how it's going to look like. Obviously, let me head over to my Azure portal. And if you see in the Azure portal, it's available in some regions, not all regions. So I already pre-provisioned my Azure OpenAI. So for example, it is in uh, East US. So when you check this Azure OpenAI Studio, hope you all can still see my screen, but let me know if there are any issues. So the first thing you have to do is before you actually use our model, you have to create a deployment. And in the deployment, you have this option of creating a base model. The base model, let's say you picked, for example, any of these models that are available in Azure Studio, right? So then you're going to say, just give me one. Yeah. So here is what I'm talking about. So as the time goes by, we will continue to release new versions, right? So the latest one is obviously July 18th last month, right? Or you can keep it the default, which will continue to auto update. So the deployment model is what you need to uh, choose. By default, it's global, but where you are giving me a flexibility to run your inference tasks in any of the available data centers, but we are offering you a cost-effective price, right? So when you are deploying this one of the available models, so you need to pick one of these. Standard means it stick to the region that you ask for. It may come with a reduced throughput, but maybe you are okay. Or if you have a lot of flexibility, then you can go with the global standard deployment. Okay, that's all you have to do. Nothing much, nothing scientific. So you just need to pick one of these deployment types before you actually start it. So once you deployed it successfully, then you can just in your code or in the studio, you will have to reference this deployment model to run your inference tasks. It's as simple as that. Let me move on to the next one that I was planning to talk. So we also introduced something like a reproducible output in Azure OpenAI. So as you guys know, these are all generative AI. So generative AI is something that based on your input task or input token, we will generate the content on the fly, as we all know that. So I don't need to specifically call out. But every time you ask the same question, then you likely get a different response. It's not going to be a canned response every time, right? So that's the default behavior of large language models, or generative AI for that matter. So nothing scientific, nothing new in that, right? But let's say you wanted to predict the output instead of giving you different reasons every time. Let's say you have developed an application and multiple users in your organization are using your application, and they are all getting different answers, and they get confused or they get say, "Oh, what is this?" It's a misleading information, right? So then what we did was, so obviously you could say they are non-deterministic, right? Because each time you ask the same question, you are getting a different answer. Uh, so that's when we introduced something like a reproducible output that really helps us to make it more deterministic, right? So what I mean by that, so you can set the default behavior by setting some parameters in your code. That way, we can predict the output is close to accurate among 50 questions that you ask repetitively. So that is much better than giving a different response all the times. All right, now I'll show you in my demo too. Uh, Having said that, we cannot guarantee 100% of the time. There are times I would say 80% of the times we'll give you a deterministic output, right? But there are times you might get some incorrect, and we are not there yet. So that is something that may come hopeful in the future. I don't know, but this is an effort to get you a deterministic output for your same question that are being asked, kind of changing the default behavior, right? So the way you can do this is in your code, we need to set some parameters called a seed parameter. By default, it's null, or you don't need to set this. In that case, it defaults to the default behavior, right? As I mentioned, it's still on a best effort basis, but we do our best in terms of giving a deterministic output. I would say maybe 85%, 90% of the time, right? Again, this is just the beginning. It is still a preview feature, but you can go ahead and try in your code, whether with any of the GPT-4 models, you should be do this. But we still want to call out, it is not 100% guaranteed, but yeah, you should, if your application demands some sort of deterministic output, then you could do so. No code changes really. So for example, let me share my code. Just bear with me for a moment. So hope you all can see this thing. So it's a sample code that I just picked up. So if you see here, so all I did was, and I just picked my Azure OpenAI endpoint, the key, and all those things. So here I'm using a GPT-4 model. So the default behavior is non-deterministic, right? So you are asking the same question, something like this. So you're going to get a different response. So what I did was I'm just looping it for a couple of times and see, asking the same question and see what kind of output it gives me, right? So let me just run this and show you. A bit slow today. So if you see in each time, although the message is same, but the content could be slightly different, right? So you see that. So it may be okay for small things, but when you are really working on an enterprise application where you really need some concrete information, right? This may not really work well. So that's where you need to have the deterministic output. So if you see for the first time, it gave a different answer. The second time, it could be this thing. It's just inspired by, and the third time, it's much kind of simplified it much further, right? Um, and obviously, so that's where all you have to do is set the seed value, and you need to play with this number. So if I am gonna run the same thing, then hopefully at least three out of three times may give me an correct output. Again, as I said, this is something that we have to play with it to make sure we are indeed getting or continue to fine tune the seed value. Yeah, so if you see no stars, no planets, not even, so this kind of matched with this thing. And as I mentioned, the second time, it is still not deterministic, but that's what we mean by it's not really guaranteed, but that continues to be fine-tuned by you as a developer to see, what makes the seed value more. Yeah, so that's where you can play with these temperature values. You want more deterministic and everything, right? So just a simple code change. It is still in preview. I don't know if in the future releases we guarantee it or we will just say it's going to be, this behavior like 90% of the time it is still deterministic or not. But there is a simple code change that you need to play with this seed value and fine tune it. And that's all you have to do. Nothing significant, nothing scientific here. Just one line of code change. Okay, but this really comes in handy as you fine tune your prompts and expected deterministic output for your inference models and responses from the these OpenAI models or Azure OpenAI for that matter. Okay, now moving on to the next touch point that I wanted to talk about. So we talked about just to give a quick recap who joined a little late. GPT-4 Mini is the latest model that we introduced in the last month or so. And then it's a multi-model, handles text as well as images. It's a bit cheaper than GPT-4o. Or you need to think we also introduced something like regional versus global options. If you have some flexibility of running your inference tasks in any of the Azure regions. In the last month, we also introduced something like a reproducible output, which is something that we can give you a deterministic output for your prompts. We don't guarantee it, but we are getting there, as you have seen in the demo. You need to play with it, play with the right questions. Although I just asked one simple question, right? The next one that I was going to talk about is the Azure OpenAI for batch deployment. So until now, whatever you have seen in the demos, it's pretty much about a chat with your, you know, public data or private data. I ask a question, I get an answer back, period, right? I ask for some assistance, hey, and help me in generating a Python code, or maybe just answer this question, it does it. But which is okay. But as you start embracing the OpenAI for the real-time use cases. In this case, it's going to be, for example, batch deployments where you don't need a response right away, but you have a large task that needs to be handled, and then you can wait. So that's where these batch deployments come into the picture, where the batch deployments allow you to run some sort of large scale complex tasks. Typically, the bad job means, I mean, you are telling me that, hey, I can wait, but give me an answer. So our turnaround time is 24 hours, but sometimes it could be sooner. But the SLA that we give you is 24 hours. Um, and obviously, because of the fact you don't need a response right away, it's a batch deployment. It's a bit cost effective, as we say, 50% less cost than the standard global standard pricing, as I have shown you. So those are the three things that we need to keep in mind. So again, this is a preview feature. I don't have the GA date yet, but this is something that you can go and play with it in the Azure OpenAI Studio, or you can play with it in your code. You can start submitting the batch deployments through your Python code, or maybe if you want to try it out, you can just do it in the Azure OpenAI Studio also. So how does it work? So essentially, when we say batch, we send a series of requests, maybe put it in some input file, and send it to one of the large language models for processing, and we can queue the job. We take time to process it and come and send you the output for your review later on. Okay. Although you submit the task, you can always cancel it anytime you want to, or if you change your mind. So let's talk about some of the use cases. So the use cases could be, as I mentioned, it could be, for example, it could be, natural language processing tasks too. It could be you have a big document for sentiment analysis or whatever it is, right? And you don't want to really, you are okay to wait for some time, but you have a big data set. So that's where you can use batch deployments. So again, I don't need to go through this list, but these are some of the use cases that you can consider for batch deployments. It could be a document review that you are okay to wait for some time, or it could be you have a big you're doing working on a data science project and you are in the process of data extraction analysis for unstructured data. That is something you can play with it, right? So how is it gonna work? So let me head over to my Azure portal once again. So the thing you're gonna do this is, so this is one of my Azure OpenAI. It is available in East US2, I believe. So let me just look it up and let me head over to Azure OpenAI Studio. So on the left hand side, you see something like the bad jobs. It is still in preview. Okay. So that's why we call it out. So it's a pretty straightforward process. We have kind of redesigned the Azure OpenAI Studio. It has a new look. If you see, If you want, you can go back to the old look. I'm not going to do that, or you can stick to the. If you are playing with Azure OpenAI Studio for the first time, it will say it's a new look. But if you have been using it, it will kind of give you a tour of the new look as well. So here's what I'm going to do. So last night, just to make sure my demo gods cooperate with me, I ran a bad job. It's kind of completed. Now I can just download it and do my analysis, right? If you see, it ran yesterday evening and it's all completed. Although it took much faster, it did not take like 24 hours. But so the first thing you're gonna do is create a bad job here. So you're gonna have an input file. So today we support JSON-L format. So I have a small input file. Obviously, you need to play with the right file. So if you see this here, I have this thing. This So imagine this is going to be a big data set. For the demonstration purposes, I'm just showing you a small file. But eventually, so the only thing you need to change in this input file is so this has to match your deployment name. So in my case, my the deployment name is oh, sorry. The first thing you need to do is create a deployment. And when you are creating a deployment, um, so you need to pick this. Let me show you. Yeah, so here you need to pick the batch model. Sorry, not this one. Deploy base model. Yeah, I think I picked this yes last night. Yeah, so you need to create a deployment out of batch. And once you do that, and here I just named it as batch. The model name is you are using GPT-4, but this is a friendly name, right? So I'm just going to reference in my code or in my input file. That's all I have to do. So in my input file, I'm just going to reference this. Now you're going to ask you what kind of data that needs to be processed, right? So obviously this is not a real use case, right? But this is kind of asking you, process my input file. These I'm submitting a bad job, but these are all the things. Again, this is just for demonstration purposes, but you are going to have some real stuff. What you need. But this is going to be same as the type of questions you'll be asking in the real world application, right? In your Azure OpenAI Studio or wherever you are. So I have this input file, and then I'm going to just upload this here. So let me head over back to, I create a deployment first, and then I go to the bad jobs, and here I create a bad job. So I have input file. So I upload it. So for example, I have this already, so I'm going to upload this again. Then it goes through some series of provisioning steps. Uh, next, next, and it's create. So then what it does, it kind of validates your stuff, and then it runs your job. See, it is trying to validate it first, and then it says that that's when it's created. It's going to go through processing phase, and finally you can always come back and check when the batch was released. So it's as simple as that. You can do the same thing using the APIs, using the Python code that you have. You just have the input file, submit it to the batch job, and everything. It's pretty straightforward, right? So the first thing is you have to create a deployment of type batch, okay? And then you just use that. That's all you have to do, okay? So for example, last night I created, I think I forgot what I used it, but yeah, I need to change it to, yeah. So if you see here, yeah, sorry, this one I have to use global batch, yes. See, I was telling you about global standard, and then global batch. So you got to pick this, yes. Cool. And then once you have the deployment created, and then you just come back, upload your input file, and let the job complete, and you are good to go. And for example, last night I submitted a bad job, it's completed, and then the one that I submitted is running, and then it will let you know. It's as simple as that. So I was only able to cover just three topics in 25, 30 minutes, but we talked about GPT-4o mini, and then we talked about global versus standard deployments in terms of how you flexibility and everything. We talked about reproducible output that gives you deterministic responses from the large language models. And then finally, we talked about batch deployments in Azure OpenAI. This is going to be a game changer because there's a lot of customers are asking for it. Instead of just asking me, some simple questions, get a response. They need some backend processing for some of these use cases that we talked about. So this is going to be a game changer as customers start embracing it for some of these complex use cases. So that's pretty much it. I'm on time, Naveed. Happy to answer any questions the team has.
Yes, thank you, Kumar. Any questions, folks? I know we are right on time.
Yeah,
Go ahead,
Naveed,
Naveed.
I have a quick two questions actually, very quick, and they're related to each other. I hope the answer is not too big because this is a big issue when we do testing for AI, services. So if I need to, for example, do integration tests for an AI service to see if it really answers correct or not, I cannot do this because every time it gives me the wrong or not wrong, sorry, different
Yeah.
answer. And I cannot determine, oh, this is a good one or not. How do you suggest doing this, especially with this reproducible results? And even that one is not even. So how do you suggest we test that, these services?
So this feature, the reproducible output is again, uh, it's not in, I mean, the seed value is something that we have to play with it and try it out as I showed in my code. The second thing is, which I'm planning to talk about it, we also have a feature called prompt flow in Azure Machine Learning, and that's also integrated in Azure AI Studio. So with prompt flow, what you can do is you can just uh, there is a concept called uh, prompt flow variants, right? So you can set those variants and run these models couple of times to see which answer is close to what you're looking for. And once you get the answer that you're looking for, you can train the model and then you can deploy it. So if you just go back and check for um, Azure machine learning prompt flow, that gives you more answer in terms of getting a deterministic output. That has been there for a while in Azure machine learning, that we recently introduced it in Azure AI Studio, but it has been there in the machine learning and in the form of reproducible output. We just kind of introduced in the Azure OpenAI Studio as well. So you do have multiple options. You know, to deterministic output, as I showed you, it's not 100% guaranteed, but we are getting there. That's one thing, although it's still in preview. The second thing is, I suggest you know, look at, Azure machine learning prompt flow, which will let you set some prompt variants. So this is a great article, just go through it, and then this will allow you to set prompt variants to get the output that you're looking for. So you're going to train your model to make sure you see this. This is what I was referring to. So that may be close to what you're looking for, but just give it a try and let us know. This is one of the things that the customers have asked for it too, and we recently integrated this into the AI Studio as well. So you don't need to use Azure Machine Learning, but it is available out of the box in the AI Studio as well.
Thank you.
Any other questions, folks?
That's a great question. Please just check Azure AI Studio prompt flow. You will get yeah, this is what I was referring to.
Great. Thank
Thank
you,
you, Kumar.
Kumar.
Thank
Any
you all.
other? I don't see any other question. Thank you for joining, everyone, and thank you for your time. And hope you had a wonderful rest of your great weekend. Thank you, and good day,
Thank you
everyone.
all. Thank you. Bye now.